Penders is away with Belgium at the World Cup, but has boldly stated in an interview that he is ready for a shot at the Chelsea first team. Football.London caught up with Konstantin Eckner, a Bayer Leverkusen-focused journalist who gives us some fascinating insight on Xabi Alonso's time at Leverkusen. Could we see the return of Rosenior to the Blueco family? Some interesting happenings in Premier League management could see a little merry-go-round of managers. Despite much criticism pertaining to Blueco's project pertaining to Strasbourg, it looks undeniable that they're starting to produce results with as many as 7 Strasbourg players representing their countries at the World Cup. And Jose Mourinho names Matheus Fernandes as the player he'd like to bring in at Real Madrid, so does that spell the end of Enzo Fernandez's chance of getting the move? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And it's a slow news day on the transfer front, but we've got some Chelsea news to get into and some Chelsea adjacent news, so let's just get into it. Mike Penders was asked about his upcoming time at Chelsea in an interview with Volt Balkrant, and he said, "I am starting pre-season at Chelsea and will try to prove myself in training. Hopefully I stay injury-free and can prove myself. Anything is possible, but I am starting at Chelsea and will do my utmost to achieve my goal. Am I ready for it? Definitely. But first I want to focus entirely on this World Cup. After that, we'll see." So the goalkeeping situation at Chelsea has fans kind of split straight down the middle. A lot of fans want to see us go in for Mike Maignan, but a lot of fans, like myself, are actually ready to see Penders given a shot. Now, I wasn't initially that way, but I did a lot of research on Penders, compared him to Mike Maignan and Robert Sanchez, and at the end of the day, for the money we'd have to spend on Robert Sanchez, by the looks of it, Penders represents a good option, and at 20 years old, he represents an option who could be our goalkeeper for the next decade. I love the fact that he's backing himself already, and why wouldn't you? He's going out to play with Belgium at the World Cup. If he gets a lot of game time, this could be a really interesting opportunity for us as Chelsea fans to get a look at him and see how he gets on against some of the big boys. I'll need to look into Belgium's group, but at the end of the day, the World Cup is always an opportunity to come up against some of the biggest players in the world, and although maybe not full of players from their golden generation, you still would expect Belgium to do reasonably well. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sync, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so next up, we're going to talk about Xabi Alonso and a really interesting interview on Football LDN with Dr. Konstantin Eckner. The article starts, "In Alonso, Chelsea know they will be getting a fluid coach who has shown a multitude of different strengths in his short, in the grand scheme of things, managerial career to date. Yet there seems to be a question, an exciting one, regarding how Alonso's Chelsea side will play once he gets his ideas across to his new players." Football.London caught up with Dr. Konstantin Eckner, a Bayer Leverkusen-focused journalist, to talk about Alonso's most successful period as a manager so far and what Chelsea supporters can expect in terms of the Spaniard's style. "The style slightly varied from season to season," said Eckner. "In his first year, after he took over mid-season, he simply tried to stabilise the team. During the championship winning season year, Leverkusen played pretty sophisticated possession football where they advanced the ball through Granit Xhaka and Florian Wirtz to break the opposing press. There were tweaks made by Alonso from time to time. At times, they used one of the centre-backs to exploit holes in the opposition's defence. Other times, they put an emphasis on dribbles by the wingers. It was, for the most part, a proactive style of football. In his final season, Alonso reverted to a stronger focus on transition attacks, especially when facing strong opponents." So this is already really promising, right? Because what I think part of the issue what we had with Maresca, and to a lesser extent Liam Rosenior as well, is they were quite doggedly married to their systems. Although Maresca did prove that when absolutely necessary he would adjust that system vis-a-vis his whole thing with Robert Sanchez, all of the time during the wins and the losses we saw very similar style football. It was all very much get it out to the wingers, pass it back, recycle it down, and very rarely actually get it up to the striker. Maresca's football was incredibly patient and some might say boring. Liam Rosenior tried to change that up a little bit with a high press that our team just wasn't equipped to deal with, and even when we were getting absolutely battered, he didn't move too far away from that. So already what we're hearing from a Bayer Leverkusen expert is Alonso is a adaptable manager, right? He will adapt to each game. Absolutely, he will have a core philosophy, and based on everything I've seen, that core philosophy seems to be about possession, dynamic transition, and allowing his attacking players to be dynamic in attack. But depending on the kind of teams we're playing and the kind of game we've got in front of us, we might see Alonso change things up from time to time, which when you think about where we've actually struggled the most part over the last few seasons is in breaking down low blocks. Players like Valentin Barco might be really useful for that, really versatile players who can play different positions across the pitch. And for instance, like I say, we did see Maresca do this kind of thing sometimes when we played big teams, i.e. PSG in the Club World Cup final. He strayed away from his usual kind of football and went into much more of like a transition-focused kind of football that allowed our attacking players more freedom and got the best out of Cole Palmer and João Pedro. But for the most part, it was boring, stodgy football, and even when it wasn't working, he didn't really change it much. So hopefully that's the kind of thing we're going to get to see with the gaffer next season. The article continues, when Alonso's appointment was confirmed last month, sources told Football.London that Chelsea will be placing a focus on building the right culture behind the scenes at Cobham. The club believes Alonso will be central in doing that. Many of his previous players have openly praised the former Spain international for his man management skills. So that's a breath of fresh air just in itself, because it feels like we had two very polarising managers between Maresca and Liam Rosenior. Maresca was very much tactics, all of that, and maybe not so good at getting the best out of some of our more creative players in the man management side of things. But Liam Rosenior, to counter that, was under the table being criticised by players while he was there for being too friendly. The benefit that Alonso's already got in this respect is his absolutely unbelievable playing career, married with the fact that he's also achieved an unbelievable feat with that invincible season at Leverkusen. And yeah, the culture thing is an absolute issue that needs to change, isn't it? Because we think about the red card situation, we think about even going back to Pochettino being at the team with, you know, Nicholas Jackson and Madueke fighting on the pitch about penalties and stuff. This is one of the main issues we've got with having such a young team, and without kind of that experience dotted around to keep everyone in check. Like, we've got young guys, and, you know, egos are a thing 100%. So I'm really into the idea of Alonso kind of coming in and just bringing the team together and hopefully making us all a bit more mature, but also creating a winning culture behind the scenes. But to counter all of that, however, Jonas Hoffmann wasn't so fond of Alonso from their time working together at Leverkusen. While Hoffmann was an ever-present figure in Alonso's setup during the title-clinching 23-24 campaign, the German winger slipped down the pecking order the following season, and he criticised his former boss for not being open and honest with him. Something Ekner recalled when asked about Alonso's man management attributes: most players held him in high regard. That said, Jonas Hoffmann seemed critical of Alonso after the Spaniard had left. Hoffmann played a pivotal role in the 23-24 season, but lost his spot in the starting 11 during Alonso's final year. Hoffmann alluded to the fact that Alonso didn't clearly communicate to him why he had slipped in the internal pecking order. Sources close to Chelsea, however, are counting on Alonso to striking a close bond with the squad he inherits this summer. The club will want him to do similar with the match-going supporters as well, something that has been lacking in recent times with head coaches and the fans. So the Hoffmann thing's interesting because he was like a really, really important player. He basically lived in that right half space behind the striker, less creative than Florian Wirtz and you know, Granit Xhaka as a deep line distributor, obviously, but still played a really, really important part. He was a very athletic player and was almost always in the starting 11 when they won the Invincible season, right? So I guess the thing is, like, there's a couple of things that aren't mentioned here. My understanding is that in the last season that Alonso was at Leverkusen, they kind of switched from a back three to a four at the back, so maybe Hoffmann's particular attributes didn't really fit that system at the time. But the other thing as well, isn't it, is like, you can't get everyone to love you all the time. It's a really, really difficult thing. So what I actually take from this is the fact that only one player came out and seemed to have a problem, and that problem was just about not getting in the team. Okay, maybe there's a conversation there to be had about Alonso not communicating well enough with him, but maybe he just wasn't picking up what Alonso was putting down. At the end of the day, if a player's been dropped, even if the manager's not been completely clear with them in terms of getting it on the table why he's been dropped, you turn up, you do better in training, and you force your way back into the team. And if you can't, it's probably just because you're either not in the right mentality or you're not good enough. So there's loads of reasons that might have been the case, but for me, the positive thing there is it was only one player, and the majority of the other players, by the sound of it, hold him in really high regard, and you can see why, because he turned so many players into absolute world beaters. So guys, I found that to be absolutely fascinating. Just a bit of an insight from someone that was there and covering this kind of stuff in and around the time that Xabi Alonso was up by Leverkusen. And it's interesting that it talks about when he came in, he didn't try and tear up the book, right? And, you know, this is kind of what Liam Rosenior did. Liam Rosenior played like 8 games without changing too much, and then tried to change everything, and that's when everything fell apart. Fortunately, we're not in that situation this time, but it's good to know that just from a managerial perspective, that shows his adaptability again, doesn't it? It's similar to what Arne Slot did when he came into Liverpool. He didn't tear up the book and change everything. He carried on with what worked. But the situation is different this time. Alonso will be coming in with a whole pre-season, all of the summer. He's going to get to watch some of his players at the World Cup, so he's going to hopefully come in and play Alonso ball from the beginning. So next up, we're going to talk about some Chelsea adjacent news that starts with this. Ben Jacobs posted, breaking, Kieran McKenna has stepped down as Ipswich manager and decided to take a break from football. McKenna was a leading contender for Fulham, but plans to take time away from management. Now, I'll get into why this is potentially relevant to not the Chelsea perspective so much, maybe a little bit. For instance, there was talk about Liam Delap potentially going to Fulham if Kieran McKenna took over at at Fulham, right? That's absolutely not happening. So will Fulham, whoever their new manager is going to be interested in taking Liam Delap back? That remains to be seen. But the real reason this is interesting is from this Pice post right here that was via Ben Jacobs. Newly promoted Ipswich Town appreciate Liam Rosenior and Strasbourg boss Gary O'Neill. So, Ipswich want the Blue co-managers. Really, really interesting here. And the permutation that I can maybe see happening, Gary O'Neill is not happy at Strasbourg, right? He has come out and talked about how he's kind of lambasted Blueco already. He's not even been that long. He's not doing particularly well. He did all right, I guess, for coming in for half the season. They finished 8th, I think, in the league, which isn't too bad, I guess. But he has come out and already been talking about how he doesn't like Blueco. So I imagine Blueco probably not very happy with him either. So if Ipswich get Gary O'Neill, does Liam Rosenior find his way back to Strasbourg? Because the other interesting implication about this was when Liam Rosenior got sacked, it came out that one of the reasons that they went for him in the first place was because he was being linked with other Premier League teams, including Tottenham at the time. So Blueco were basically like, if we don't get Liam Rosenior to Chelsea now, potentially we lose him in the summer to another Premier League team anyway. Liam Rosenior didn't ever complain about the Blueco project, and there was a good relationship between them. He just wasn't good enough for the Chelsea job. So, is this an opportunity? I mean, maybe Liam Rosenior gets the Ipswich job. I mean, it's possible, but I don't know. What do you think Liam Rosenior would want to do? Do you think he'd want to go to Ipswich? Do you think he'd want to go back to Strasbourg? I probably, at the end of the day, I'm not a Strasbourg fan, but I do have a small vested interest just because of the Blueco link. We send a lot of our players over there, and I have actually started to enjoy keeping up with them. And I'm not a big fan of Gary O'Neill. The thing that worries me about Gary O'Neill is the same thing happening that happened with Rosenior, right? If Xabi Alonso stacks it, which I do not think he will, but if Xabi Alonso absolutely stacks it halfway through the season and gets sacked or leaves or whatever, and then we end up with Gary O'Neill, I don't want that to happen. But yeah, like I say, I think that the interesting thing here is Gary O'Neill has already been quite critical of Blueco, and Liam Rosenior's looking for a job. Liam Rosenior did pretty well at Strasbourg. He didn't mind working under those conditions with the players coming in and out all the time, and there wasn't a bad relationship between Liam Rosenior and Blueco anyway. He just wasn't ready for the Chelsea job. So guys, let me know what you think about this one. A little tinfoil hat moment. Again, it's possible Ipswich could go for Liam Rosenior himself and Gary O'Neill stays out of Strasbourg, but you would have thought if Blueco have anything to do with it, maybe they'll try and push Gary O'Neill out the door to get Liam Rosenior back. And sticking with the Strasbourg story, something really interesting from an X page called Blueco Extra. I remember last summer, whenever I suggested that Chelsea youngsters players should join Strasbourg for regular game time and accelerated development, some fans were always ready to take my head off. Fast forward to the 2026 World Cup and Strasbourg have 7 representatives on the biggest stage. And right now, those youngsters are Mike Penders and Diego Moreira, who are representing Belgium, Gassim Yassin and Samir El Mourabet, who are representing Morocco, Gaël Doué, who's representing Ivory Coast, Valentin Barco, of course, who's playing for Argentina, and Paraguayan centre attacking midfielder Julio Enciso. So of those 7 players, at least 4 of them have relatively strong Chelsea links. Mike Penders obviously coming back into the first team. Diego Moreira was a player that Chelsea bought, sold for really cheap to Strasbourg, but always feels like an option to maybe bring back. Obviously, Valentin Barco will be joining us next season as well, and Julio Enciso was a bit of a weird one because when he was signed from Brighton, it's a Brighton, man, the Brighton thing, but he actually was signed as a Blueco player. Like, all of the news surrounding him at the time were Blueco signed Julio Enciso, and he went straight out to Strasbourg, but again, feels like another player that could be brought back to Chelsea, and he's actually had a pretty good season and has turned out to be one of their better players. So it's interesting, isn't it? Like I say, 7 players from the Strasbourg team representing their countries in the World Cup. Belgium, Ivory Coast, Argentina, Morocco, Paraguay maybe not expected to do so well, but the rest of those, really, really good. So it's interesting, isn't it? And in itself, it just kind of proves that something is going right there with the Strasbourg link, right? Some of those players have got Chelsea links. Almost all of them are young players as well. Strasbourg have got one of, if not the youngest team in the top 5 leagues. And there's other interesting players. Like, I would love to see Gaël Doué at Chelsea at the moment. I think that I would much rather see him at the right back or right wing back than Malo Gusto, for instance. So I just thought it was a really interesting permutation there that the Strasbourg project, and the thing is, Strasbourg fans won't love me talking about this at all. I completely respect that because the way I see Strasbourg is through the lens of Blueco. And I know that there's a lot of, obviously Strasbourg fans combined with the Chelsea fans for the protest, the Blue Co Out thing, but the majority of Strasbourg fans that aren't the ultras are happy to see their team doing pretty well, and it's always fun watching young players develop, isn't it? It's just kind of props to the Strasbourg thing, right? Like, they were really, really struggling before Blue Co bought them, and they've managed to remain pretty consistent with 7th and 8th place finishes since we bought them. And we're going to wrap up today's video with, it's not directly Chelsea related, but it very well could be. Fabrizio Romano posted this: Manchester United remain keen on Matheus Fernandes with more clubs also in the race. Jose Mourinho mentioned his name to Real Madrid yesterday. More Premier League clubs showing interest. Price tag around 85 mil. So, the key line in that is that Jose Mourinho mentioned his name to Real Madrid yesterday. And you got, and obviously the price tag is 85 mil. So he is a cheaper option than Enzo Fernandez to bolster Real Madrid's midfield. So the worry about this is if they go for someone like a Matheus Fernandes, who is really, really, hotly being courted by a lot of Premier League clubs and a lot of other clubs in the world in general. 85 mil is a lot of money, but when you compare it to 120 mil for Enzo Fernandez, it's probably the one that Real Madrid are going to lean on, unless Jose Mourinho really specifically wants Enzo Fernandez, and there's no mention of Jose Mourinho talking about Enzo Fernandez in this tweet. So could we be set to see Enzo Fernandez stay at the club purely because he's been priced out of a move? And there's a couple of permutations that are quite interesting about this. Enzo Fernandez, I've had some guys in the comments, man, I'm just going to put this to bed now, saying he didn't do anything wrong with the Real Madrid thing. He didn't say he wants to go to Real Madrid. It's like, mate, look, we all know how the game is played, right? These guys are literally told what they can and can't say. There generally will be some sort of contractual obligations and loopholes as well. So in an international break, when a Spanish-speaking outlet asks Enzo Fernandez, where would you like to live? And he says Madrid. That is him saying that he wants to go to Real Madrid. At the end of the day, if he didn't do anything wrong, then we literally banned him from playing for 2 games for nothing, and there was no outcry about that from his point, and he's not talking about it now. If he didn't do anything wrong and had been banned for 2 games and was forced to apologise to the club, by the way, if all of that didn't actually happen, then he'd be absolutely kicking off right now, being very vocal about it. But he's not, because he know what he did, we know what he did. He tried to force the move out. So the interesting thing about this is, I've said this a few times now, this whole situation is really going to be a test of the long contract model that Blue Co have implemented since they've been in. Now, obviously, we've got something similar going on with Marc Cucurella at the moment, and because Marc Cucurella apparently extended his contract on the sly, he's got 3 years left on his deal, and Enzo Fernandez has got 4. So Chelsea don't have to sell these players unless someone comes in with the right bid for them. Now, in the Marc Cucurella case, if someone comes in with the money that Chelsea want, they'll sell him, and it's the same for Enzo Fernandez as well. But it's looking like players are not able to force their way out of the clubs if they don't want to. So that's not a bad thing in itself, is it? Because what's not going to happen? Imagine Enzo Fernandez stays at the club. He's not just going to down tools because he's got 4 years left on his deal. And if he wants to move to a better club, then he has to continue playing well. So I think that's really interesting, and I'd love to know what you all think about it in the comments. Nice one, guys. That's it. I'm going to wrap up today's video, but I want to know what you think about everything we've talked about today. Mike Penders says he's ready for his shot at Chelsea. Do you agree? I'd love to know what you think about what I found to be a fascinating insight on Xabi Alonso's time at Bayer Leverkusen from a Bundesliga reporter, the managerial merry-go-round of Kieran McKenna out, and potentially one of Gary O'Neill or Liam Rosenior to Ipswich, which might leave a spot open for Rosenior to continue back at Strasbourg, alongside Strasbourg producing 7 World Cup competitors this season. And is it looking like Enzo Fernandez is going to stay at the club? Nice one, guys. I hope you're all having an absolutely wicked day, and I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.